All right. So we're back on with our weekly discussion with Coach Dylan and myself. Today we are going to be talking about the precision nutrition program and how we both have gone through it and utilized it not only on ourselves but with with the clients and athletes. So Dylan, you just finished their certification as well. So what was like your big takeaway from not only going through the program but also kind of learning how the curriculum works?
I think they take a really good and probably different approach than what a lot of people are accustomed to. And at first you're kind of like, oh, does this really work? From like the client side, and then the coaching side, you're like, it's not traditionally what you think would work, and then you kind of understand a little bit more about going after behaviors and how those types of things affect a lot of what people are doing from a health, nutrition, and training standpoint.
Well, what's your take on traditional?
Like what you see a lot, like the majority of people in our industry, like mainstream type of things in terms of like meal plans or like the little
Ketogenic
stuff
diet or
like that. Yeah, like the cleanses
yeah,
and
yeah.
all that type of stuff. People are like, oh, I want this quick fix, and they're like, in order for the stuff to last, and you not rebound back to where you were from a standpoint, you need to get down to like why you're doing these things. What's the real reason behind like why you're eating a certain stuff, because it's not always about like exactly what you're eating. It's like, why are you eating that anyway? And you kind of get to terms of, oh, like, I didn't really understand how all these other things might have affected me, and they kind of break it down like so simple that you're like, that can't work, but it works like really well.
What's interesting about this? So I've done uh, I've mentored and interned on three, I think, cohorts for PN. So like that, we had close to like 250 people that in each of those groups that I and like two other mentors or an intern and then a coach actually like managed. I've gone through the program myself twice, and I've coached probably 20 people through it, 25 people through it as well, over the course of like the past 2 or 3 years. Uh, and every time you're like, you get this little insight to be like, oh my God, that small little acknowledgement of like, oh yeah, I'm doing this because I'm tired at night, or I'm doing this because of X, Y, and Z, and this behavior keeps coming up. You realize like that's the linchpin. It has nothing to do with like, oh, I eat Cheetos at night. It's like, well, I eat Cheetos at night because I'm like, I use it as a way to like solve this other problem. And until you realize that problem, either like you do it for like a week and you're like, oh, and then like I saw a result, and then I'll say like, screw it, and you go back to what you're doing. And I think that is like the underlying piece that nobody, like you were saying before, really acknowledges, and that yeah, you can do these specific diets that have a very detailed plan that eliminate certain things, but unless you're understanding the reason why you're even gravitating towards that thing in the first place, you're going to come back to it anyways.
Yeah, yeah, they do a really good job of making things simple and focusing on little pieces of the puzzle at a time, so you can kind of put the whole thing together.
Yeah. Well, and
Make it,
that's the thing too that's tough about that program is it's a year-long program because of that. Like if you try to do
yeah,
too much at once, it always like falls apart, right? Like it's never sustainable.
yeah, they do a really good job breaking that stuff down and making it really simple. But I mean, one of the main things they talk about is what can you do well and what can you do well consistently, because if you don't have that consistency, it doesn't really matter. And obviously the more consistent you are, the better results you're typically going to end up seeing.
From a coaching standpoint, I think that's probably the hardest thing to sometimes get across is like, yeah, it may feel like you've done a lot in the past 3 days, but until you reach like maybe 6 days, you're not going to see the change that you're looking for. And if you keep going 3 days on, 3 days off, 3 days on, 3 days off, like the consistency in the long term actually is you're only doing half the time, right? And we
Yeah.
know that that's probably not going to make the change. So like going through the program yourself, would you say the biggest change you notice in yourself?
Um, I guess I would say kind of awareness of trying to make better decisions about like nutrition stuff. In terms of like my thing is, and Bella always bugs me about it too, is adding like some kind of vegetables or fruit. Like I have no problem with fruits. Adding that stuff to meals, like it's simple. Like wake up in the morning, and grab an apple or something to eat whatever out, or throw some blueberries on. But like it was tougher to like prepare peppers or something for like an omelet, and just kind of being more aware of that challenge that they give you to do for like the 2 weeks. That habit, that was a challenge, and then just general awareness of like hunger and fullness cues, because like a big thing for me, and I know a lot of other people as well, and it's some of the clients that come in at the SBCs, when they have these events, whether it's holidays in the winter or like all the graduation parties, barbecues and stuff in the summer, where there's just so much, I guess, like junk out there, or red light foods or whatever, and not being able to only have like a little bit. It's like you eat so much at once, and you're just like, I feel like absolute garbage after. And it's like, can you take a step back and kind of realize, let me try the 80% full, or let me just eat this piece of cake slow. And then it's like, I don't need another one. Like, I enjoyed it, and I don't need to have 5. So I think just being aware of those things, and knowing like it's not all or nothing. It's not like, you go to those parties and I can't have any of this stuff. I need the salad with the chicken, no dressing or anything like that. It's like, no, you can stray, but you need to make sure you kind of don't go too far one way.
What are your red light foods?
Just like processed foods, brownies, cookies, all that stuff.
It's funny. Yeah, I you know what? I still think mine is ice cream. Like I don't know. Yeah. I think I've gotten now so much better at being able to kind of like that. The hunger cue thing is like probably the biggest change that I've made in the past like 6 months, is that whole idea of being okay with being a little bit hungry, but also not going until you're stuffed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That wasn't really trying to lose weight. I was always trying to gain some, but in the past, like I've kind of gained, I guess, it wasn't like lean mass putting on, and that was probably because of those things. So just in those instances of using that stuff, those principles, those habits for like those certain instances and certain foods, so I kind of stay along track with my goals. Because then it was almost like, I got to work hard to like kind of revert back to what I was doing so well before, so I don't kind of take a couple steps back in terms of what I was trying to do. Because obviously that stuff doesn't necessarily help you recover and that stuff from your training, as well as others.
No, I mean, like even now, like when Callie, if she buys ice cream, no matter how good I am at putting it in a small bowl, there will always be like we might do that one night. The next day, if I am remotely stressed out coming home from work, or even in the morning, I'm eating that whole free. I'm eating all of it. Like there's no governing after that. And I think that's another piece that the PN does such a good job with, is like, you only have so much willpower, right? The people that always say like, oh no, I don't have to have it. Like my kids only eat it. I don't ever eat it. It's like, BS, right? There's a day where you come home and your kids got it out. Yeah. And you're eating a handful of it. And it's impossible to always have that like willpower all the time to say no. So I think then shaping your environment is the other part that they do really well, and making it easy to make those decisions is pretty crucial. So did you gain weight?
Yeah, it was up. I feel like last summer I was around like 155. And then before the surge, the most I was at was like 170.
Really?
Yeah, it was up to like 70 in and around. So like I was up to like high 160s in October, or November, whenever I got pneumonia, and I lost like 5 or 6 pounds, something like that. I was back down to like 160, 159, and then right before like the surgery for my ACL, I was up to like 170 or so. Now I'm back down to like 163. A month and a half later, which I'm kind of like, every time I got like pretty far into where I wanted to go, I had like something, those two things reverted me back. I was like, yeah.
I think so. The biggest thing that when I remember first using PN was it's it's more in line with how I think anyways, was their scientific approach of like, hey, you're going to take these measurements every week or almost every day, depending on what you're doing. And then you're also going to track your consistency. And that gives you the ability to then like see what to do. And I remember using that strategy for when I tried to get ready for like powerlifting, and I went from 175 up to 195 in a month and a half. That was the most miserable I've ever been. And then bringing it back down, I did the PN coaching program, and then I tried to go back up again from 172, which I got up to like 185 again, and was leaner, not as just heavy as I was before, and then used it to kind of come back down. And I would say like over the course of those 2 or 3 years, I mean, I probably put on maybe 5 to 6, 10 at most pounds of like muscle. But what's pretty crazy is if I would have looked back at when I was playing soccer in college at 155, like maybe 150 pounds at like 7% body fat when we did our testing, I'm now 173, 175 and almost getting back to that body fat percent. So like in the span of 10 years, putting on almost 20 pounds of muscle is pretty awesome when I think about it. But it's freaking been a long time. Had I been doing this process this whole time, it probably would have been much faster.
Yeah.
So, like we already been talking about a little bit, but like, in the program, in the curriculum and stuff, I feel like it's probably the only one I know of that utilizes like a universal theme for everybody. Like everybody has, you can say like, oh, you might use a limited carbohydrate intake kind of style. You might use a limited fat intake or a high protein or maybe intermittent fasting. But because we're all human, I feel like it does a really good job of being pretty agnostic as terms of not saying you have to do one, but here are the governing principles that no matter which one you choose are always going to kind of influence you. Like your hunger cues, eating slowly, eating to 80% full, or eating to 100% full if you're trying to gain weight. What do you think about that stuff?
Yeah, I think a lot of people get caught up with like, the labels of, oh, I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna try that. And it's like, all right, yeah, like, you can do that. But, those types of things might not be sustainable. And that goes back to like the fads and stuff like that. So can you install these principles that are gonna work no matter what system? Like those principles can be applied over different systems,
Yeah.
And different plans. And that's why I think it makes, like you said, it makes it so universal and it works over, different, in those different settings. Because, it depends on people's access to stuff as well. I mean, some people might not have as much access to, I don't know, all certain vegetables that we have access to in one area. You across the United States, maybe it's a little bit different or whatever. They're in a different type of setting. But if you use those same principles, it should work just as well. As opposed to, I'm not eating carbs for the whole week. And then you're like, all right, how does that make you feel? And that's where those big things like the outcome-based decision making is like, all right, how is that working for you? And how do you feel? Because like those are going to be the true determining factors, I think, of, should I continue doing this or, maybe should I try something else? Because if you're miserable, it's like, it's not going to be sustainable.
Well, not only that, but like, what if it doesn't even show you the result you're like? If you're doing this nutrition plan that's like causing you to be like miserable, and it shows a low level return, right? Like, what's the chances you're going to continue that? Like zero, right? And I think your expectation based on what other people have shown as a result is a little bit, short-sighted in that you don't know what the context of what they're doing. And like, because like I know for a fact that like, yes, it's much easier for me to manipulate probably my weight day to day because of how often I train and how long I've been training and how long I've been utilizing my nutrition stuff. But for someone that's like, maybe just learning how to do this, it can still be a challenge, right? So like they may expect, oh, I saw this person lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks in intermittent fasting. It's like, yeah, but that might not be you, right? And you don't know how long they were able to, like, maybe they did a 24-hour fast, right? You're only doing a 12 or 16. Like that's going to be a very different kind of strategy. So I think you're right in that it can be applied to anything, and you can still base off of like the information you're getting. You're going to make your adjustments. It's not just blindly following something.
Yeah.
What would you change differently about the program? Like, what would you like to see different?
I don't know. I remember on like the check-ins or whatever, the assessments, whatever it is, I always kind of asked a question like that. I don't know if it was the same exact thing. It was like, if you could change something about the program, or whatever's happening, what would it be? I feel like I never really had an answer because I feel like I don't really know what could make it better.
Yeah.
Because is there something like if they're at the top of the food chain, obviously they want to keep continuing to improve, but they don't have anyone like people below them. Like, oh, this is what PN's doing. let's how can we shape what we're doing into a more like that model. So it's like, I don't know if they have a something that they're modeling. I mean, they have all the research and all this stuff, but it's like they don't have someone that's doing it better, I don't think. So I don't look at what other people are doing, but PN should do that, because I feel like they're already on top of that stuff.
I think they do a pretty good job of actually looking in other fields to draw from.
Yeah.
Right. And that's probably because I think that's the other piece that so many people kind of get hung up on, is like, there isn't anything new in nutrition, right? Nothing has been changed really in a very long time that is suddenly going to make it so much easier to, manipulate your intake or, change your body composition. Like it's the way the body works is the way the body works. You can't like hack it to get something better. It's more of understanding all the processes that go into your like choices and your behaviors. And I think when you look at nutrition in the sense of, the breakdown of everything, it still is going to be dictated actually by these other influences, not so much as to, what they found was that you burn more carbohydrates and, steady state cardiovascular work or fat, and that still isn't going to change that. You're going to eat way more food if you're always using it as a reward system, right? Which comes probably from more of like some of the stuff in motivational interviewing, which is born out of kind of alcoholics and stuff like that, right? So they're always pulling from these different kind of other categories that we probably need to be more addressed than the actual food part. And now I think what would probably, if we were going to probably change something, and it has nothing to do with PN, but in overall, it would probably be like, we need to readdress our food source in general, right? The food that we typically are eating is so hyper palatable and calorically dense that it's like, it's very hard to not do that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just some of that stuff's so readily available.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of, I don't think I'd really change too much of it. The only thing that always sometimes comes up is the idea that it's like a year-long program, right? And like not a lot of people, no, I shouldn't say not. I would say on average, you probably get like 70%, maybe a little bit lower, to stick through the full year. But the people that don't still see a really good result. But I also know that if you want something to last, you have to be engaged with it that long, right? And it takes that long to kind of reinforce it over and over and over again. There was people when we first started doing that, when I first signed up for them, there was people that had done the program 3 years in a row. Right. So that was like, by the time, like, and this is when I was interning, like we had seen the same people ask for the same coach and go through it 3 full years in a row.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, maybe one of the things is, and that's the tough thing too, because there's so much to get through in a year. It's, maybe can you figure out which habits, and might depend on like an individual basis. Can you figure out which habits are really the most important for certain individuals and maybe revisit them and take out maybe some of the other ones that might not be as important?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Like Bella's doing it right now, and I was just looking how you like the beta version that you can change things around and whatnot. And one of this, like, and for me too, like I think you might have done the same thing, or some of the habits are really easy, like the drinking caloric free beverages, and like I do that anyway already, so like it wasn't tough. Bella really drinks like coffee, and doesn't really. She puts a little bit of stuff in it or whatever, but other than that, like for me, that just like it was like, I did my habit today, like just 2 weeks in a row, and it was pretty easy, as opposed to maybe figuring out one of the habits that was more challenging for me and kind of led me to maybe a little bit more results. Maybe going back and revisiting that, whether it's like then or maybe leave time for it at the end.
That's actually a really good piece to think about in terms of being able to individualize a little bit more, because you're right. There's points on that piece where I was just kind of like checked out because it wasn't a piece of something I was either A, care about, or B, needed to work on.
And that's what's tough too, is the person that probably needs to make that decision is the individual coach that's doing it. Because like when I was reading about kind of like the whys behind the program and stuff like that, when you first get introduced to like the onboarding process and that stuff, it was just explaining like, a lot of people think, I get my protein and whatever, let's skip that. It's like, there's probably a foundational thing you need to work on. So that, you got to tread carefully there. But like, I think like that's just one of the things that maybe you do like an intake thing for a day or two. You're fine. You know what I mean? But you look at a lot of adults and people that probably go through the program, and they probably drink like that. That's I'm probably not the norm there. You know what I mean?
Well,
People
I think,
alcohol, and it would have depended on the time of the year too. Because if it was summer, like
yeah.
it would have been a little bit more challenging because of going out or whatever. I just don't really do that often, and depends who I'm hanging around with and stuff like that. But I wasn't like drinking alcohol that much either, so I was like, oh, I'm fine.
Well, I
You know?
think the other piece too is that our own biases and unconscious underestimating or overestimating tends to lead people in the direction of like, oh no, I already do this actually really well. And it's kind of like, well, do you? Like, if you measured it, would it show that? And that's usually where it's kind of like, it doesn't.
Yeah, that's
So,
how you shouldn't really coach yourself.
yeah, yeah, that's a very good point. Shouldn't coach-
Another,
that might be my favorite line. You shouldn't coach yourself.
yeah, I mean, it takes someone else kind of from the outside looking in to be like, maybe this isn't the best thing.
Well, so that's that. So like I remember, going through the PN program. Luckily, I know some people obviously in the company, so I got a discount to do it. But like I literally paid someone like a good chunk of money for a year to basically just tell me like, so Tommy, what could you be doing a little bit better, right?
Yeah,
I'd give a suggestion like, I think I want to do this because it's not like I don't know the information, right? This is like the fourth, fifth time I've gone through it. And I was like, hey, because I would be having a problem, like, hey, my weight hasn't gone up over the past week. What's going on? Should I be doing something different? And he's like, well, what are you struggling with? And I was like, you know what? I need some like help with this. And he would give me a suggestion for like a super shake, right? And it's like, yeah, I already have my own recipes for super shakes. So then it was just like, oh yeah, I probably need to do that more often. Like I kind of got away from it, and that's all. It was just him to say, hey, you probably need to reinvestigate this or put a little more effort into this, and
yeah,
that's it. Because I was convincing myself that I was doing the right thing, and yet it wasn't showing correct. Like my outcome wasn't there, and then someone come and be like, yeah, you're probably not doing that as well as you could be.
yeah, and that's the thing about the program too is you do have a coach that you're doing it if you're not with what's everything that's going on now, you're not necessarily meeting with someone in person. So you're like, oh, like I'm remotely training or I'm remotely working on this nutrition stuff. And it's like, oh, like I'm alone or whatever. It's like, you're not really alone in the program because you coach and you have constant access to be able to
Yeah,
communicate and stuff through the program itself, whether, you can go outside and do email, but you can do it right there. The lesson, or you can send messages. So that's the important thing too, whether their coach is doing it, or I think PN does a really good job of within the habits and lessons. They can automate those responses and get you to think about that.
yeah.
So like, if the coach isn't doing it, at least they're like,
They're starting the
well,
conversations.
yeah, you're almost like you have to think about it yourself by some of the questions, almost like the like motivational interviewing type of questions. And you're like, in your instance, it could have been like, like what could I do a little bit better to kind of go towards the direction I want to go. And it's like, oh, well, maybe, I'm doing this really well, but maybe I can do, add a little bit more, whether, for a super shake, let me make a shake and a half as
Yeah.
opposed to just one, and then make the outcome based decision, whether that's helping you or you need to take a different approach.
Who would you say this program's not for?
Um, I want to say how, I maybe, and I don't know if they have different versions or whatever for like the level 2 and level 3 clients, or did they just? I think they do the same stuff.
So there, you're right. Level 3 people, which for people that are watching this, level 1 is someone that like has no idea really about nutrition at all. They don't really understand what a carbohydrate is or a protein. They're not really sure about hunger cues. Like they're just bare bones. I eat. I don't really know what's in it, and I just have it. Level 2 are people that typically have an awareness. That's where a lot of most of the people are going to fall between level 1 and 2, right? And level 2 is, yeah, I kind of know about nutrition. I played with some stuff, but I need help with kind of organizing. And then level 3 is like, I'm getting ready for a figure competition or a bodybuilding show, or, I'm an elite athlete that needs to be in this kind of zone of fitness level and body composition to maintain my performance. And the thing with level 3 is that most people are only in that space for a little bit of time. And like, so I think the level 3 people, you need to have a lot more detail, even though it's still under the same principles, right? But like you have to be pretty precise. It's almost like in our lifting program, right? In that I want to execute a little bit more volume every week by tracking this stuff. And if I'm not tracking it, I have really no idea. Same thing with food. I need to have a pretty good understanding of where I'm at, how much deviation I need to go up or down in order to kind of keep pushing this intensity or adaptation. And then when do I back off and come back? And you're right, that the program isn't that detailed, but you could potentially do that with your coach if you guys are on that same page.
Yeah, and that's where like I think they provide the intake journal and stuff like that you could go over. It just takes a little bit more effort, obviously, because it comes back to the cost. What's the cost? The cost of whatever. Obviously, you're gonna have to do a bit more things. I think one of the other things is like a lot of people think level 1 and level, they're like, oh, like I'm level 2. I know some stuff. It's like, like let's see. And I mean, they have the same foundational principles, like you already kind of said. And it's just like, all right, let's really master this level 1 stuff. And if you want more of a challenge, and let's go up to some level 2, and let's turn the notch up a little bit. Because I'm level 1, you're probably still like level 1. There's nothing like that's really wrong with it. If we want, oh hey, like I want a little bit more challenge, then obviously bump it up to adding in these little bit more difficult challenges and habits. But you shouldn't be in that zone unless you like nail all the level 1 stuff. So I think people that
level 2
to be level 2, you shouldn't be in that level, like a level 2 person, until you like really nail down level 1 stuff, because it's like you can't be skipping steps. And I think people that have a hard time with that and just like kind of their ego gets in their way or whatever, I think they're just gonna constantly butt heads with either the coach or the program, and then it might make them deviate away from what they should be doing because they think they know better.
Well, they're worried about these specific details like macronutrients and specific amount of calories, when in reality, like what you were saying earlier, if you're not really in tune with your hunger cues or the reason why you're doing some of that stuff, you can play with those all you want, but eventually you're going to revert back to your old pattern because that's why you're doing stuff to begin with. And you're right, sometimes it does. I mean, that was one of the big things that we ran into in the coaching cohort with people like, hey, I want to move faster. And it's like, yeah, you can't, right? Like that's the whole point of this, is that you're not trying to outwit the program because you think that, oh, if I do this. And the hard part was we had a lot of actually coaches in our cohort. So we had guys that would email us and be like, oh yeah, this is great information, and like I give this to my clients all the time. And then literally the next week they'd be sending us an email that'd be like, hey, this isn't working. It's like, wait a minute, right? And you get all of a sudden, like what you were saying is like they were thinking they already knew and that they had already established this kind of knowledge and like understanding of how it works and like mastered it. But in reality, it was they needed to slow down, reset, kind of gain an understanding about it, and then go about it a little differently. So it happens to all of us, which is tough. But having a coach obviously helps in that sense. The other thing too is like I don't really know I wish they did it more for maybe athletes in some cases, maybe a little more specific points for athletes, and I wish they did a younger age group.
Yeah, I think they have resources, but you just kind of got to dig a bit, because I got in the Facebook group, like someone like kind of gave me the links to the post in the past, and I went through one of the presentations. I forget the guy's name. But he was in charge of like, he had a bunch of, it was basically like a Google Doc of like links to stuff they've done in the past for the youth. But like, yeah, I think.
I mean, it's not different. It's not that much different. I just wish wording was geared a little bit more towards athletes, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's typically going to be, I guess, your level 2 client moving on up into like level 3. I mean, level 2, college type athletes and stuff like that. And even, if you're a high performing high school athlete that's trying to get to college or whatever, I think you got to dial that stuff in a bit more too. But, you shouldn't be there unless you, again, get that foundational goal and stuff under control. So you got to start and build up. And I think people that have a hard time with that would struggle. And then I think the other side of it too is, so like calorie counting, some of that stuff, it really works, I think, for some people if they've already been doing it, and if it's not driving them crazy, they enjoy it and they're getting really good results, their health is good, then they probably don't need this program or whatever. I'm sure it would help change their outlook on stuff like that, and maybe make it a little bit more manageable But at the end of the day, if it's working for them really well already, and they don't have any issues with it, then it's like, don't fix what's not broken, I guess.
I will say, I was looking back at this and I was like, all right, who has this reg really worked for and who hasn't worked for? And like, I started using this stuff just because I wanted my whole family to go through it. And I look back and like my cousin had went through the program for 7 months or 8 months, and he lost 26 pounds and actually got feeling better with some stomach issues too that were constantly like coming up and actually bringing him to the hospital a couple times. My brother lost 16 pounds with having his twins, which he was eating a lot of their snacks. And then we have that. My sister lost 20 pounds and she wanted to get back to what she was at before she had her 2 daughters. One of my good college friends had lost like 12 pounds in like 3.5, 4 months. And he was like, it was the easiest thing he's ever done in terms of just kind of following through the program. And it was just interesting in that in all those cases, the biggest piece was literally just kind of like making sure people checked in, did their lesson, and then just kind of reinforced a little bit of like, yeah, hey, how is this working for you? What could you do a little differently? What's helped you need as suggestions of like maybe making a different choice here or there. And they crushed it. And the other thing too is like they've all pretty much kept it off for the most part this whole time. And that's going back almost, I think 3 years ago is when I think my sister did it. She was like one of the first ones. So it's just it's something that I think that most people don't really understand. Like if you invest the time now, it sticks with you so much longer. Whereas you could do this thing like, oh, I'm going to spend a month and really kick the crap out of myself, or even 3 weeks, 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden, like 2 months down the road, you're right back in the same spot, which doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, I think that happens to a lot of people. And if it was as simple as, oh, give me these answers that I can do in a month, like you'd see a lot more people
everyone be fit
and happy in their body. I think if you ask, like, you look at all the testimonials and stuff that people have gone through the thing, and they're like, this has like, I've done diet stuff before, I've done training programs or whatever, and I always like reverted back, or I was never able to keep it off or whatever. And they're like, this was just so genuinely easy and sustainable throughout the entire time. And it's like, like you said, they do it again because they enjoyed it so much, and it was simple enough for them to keep doing. They're like, yeah, like, give me more.
I think another piece too that was very eye-opening was that it changed a lot of people's perception as to what they actually wanted. Yeah. I have a couple people I know that actually didn't lose any weight. They actually put on like 2 or 3 pounds, and their goal was to lose it. And what they found though was that they were much happier in adjusting other things in their life, because it goes through like stress management. It goes through how to actually be, accepting of what you're doing, which completely changed their outlook on everything. And eventually they changed their nutrition a little bit along the way, and they got like a much better understanding of it. But like their initial response had nothing to do with the food. It was actually just how they were viewing all these different facets of things. It taught them to slow down a little bit and be a little bit more cognizant, which is huge.
Yeah, and in conjunction with that, Berardi tells the story about how that lady that lost like 50 pounds, and they asked her, do you recommend this program? And she said no. And then like they contacted her and was like, what results did you get? She's like, oh, I lost 50 pounds. But like originally, I think it was before they added, like they obviously updated it since then. It was a while ago. She had there was like no communication with a coach or whatever at that time. So that was one of the things that they adjusted. And that goes back to like, you're not alone in it. Like you have this coach working with you, responding, you have access to communicating and kind of figuring stuff out together. And she didn't have that. And it was just like, here's what you need to do. And you have that, like, the lessons and stuff, or what the person, if you listen to the audio or not, I don't know if that was available to her. But, they reached out to her and kind of figured out where they went wrong, and then they adjusted. So it was more enjoyable for people, because they're like, 50 pounds, you lost 50 pounds and you don't recommend this to someone.
Well, so prior to, they had an option where you could do the program with no coach. My dad did it, and he lost like 15 pounds before, I think it was my sister's wedding or something. And or my brother's, maybe. I think it was my brother's. And yeah, like that's the thing, is like the information's solid. Like I don't know of another place that has better curriculum or resources. But you're right, adding in that component can be like the deal breaker of like really a drastic result, or just some people kind of like following along. So
Yeah.
all right, man. You got any other comments or any other thoughts on it?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Do
I have been using this stuff since like 2007 or 8 because it's been that good. So I can't really say enough about it. And they're one of the few companies that every time they put something out, I'm like, I'm gonna go use that.
Yeah. I think for me as a coach, it's helped me better be able to give information to clients in person, but also obviously going through the program and being able to, as opposed to giving them maybe the right information, but not necessarily the best information. And just being able to make it more manageable for them to do. And, hey, focus on this little habit. And, in conjunction with the motivational interviewing stuff of having them come up with the solutions and then kind of affirming it, I think it works really well.
Agreed. All right, big guy. I will talk to you later.
Sounds good.